Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most confusing tools in the manipulator's playbook, playing the victim.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're apologizing for something that wasn't even your fault? Or, being made to feel guilty for a problem that you absolutely did not create? If any of that sounds familiar, well, you know exactly what we're talking about today. And let's be really clear here. Playing the victim isn't just someone feeling sorry for themselves. Oh no, it is a calculated, strategic move. The person who actually started or escalated the conflict completely flips the script, and suddenly they're the one who's been wronged. And why do they do this? It's all about dodging responsibility and, this is key, getting your sympathy. Because once they have that, they have control. All right, so to really get our heads around this, here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the victim card itself. Then we'll zoom out and see how it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle of manipulation. We'll dig into the personalities that lean on these tactics, see how they recruit other people to their cause, and then, and this is the most important part, we'll talk about how you can respond effectively. So first up, the ultimate victim card. And we have to understand, this is so much more than someone just getting a little defensive. And you have to believe me, this is not an accident. It's not some emotional overreaction. It is a calculated, strategic move. It is designed to do two things perfectly. One, shift all of that blame right onto your shoulders. And two, completely seize control of the story, making them look like the hero or the martyr. And that leads us perfectly into our next section, because playing the victim almost never happens on its own. It's really just one page in a much bigger, much more complicated playbook of manipulation. Have you ever heard this one? Oh, you're just too sensitive. You're blowing this whole thing way out of proportion. That is a classic. The whole point of a line like that is to make you doubt your own feelings, to make you think your reaction is the problem, not their behavior. And that, my friends, is called gaslighting. And there's the definition right there. Gaslighting is literally trying to make you doubt what you see, what you remember, even your own sanity. It's the slow, quiet erosion of your ability to trust yourself. It's incredibly damaging. Okay, or what about this gem? Well, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had to react this way. See what's happening? This is pure blame shifting. There's zero ownership. They frame their terrible behavior as some unavoidable consequence of your so-called mistake. It's never their fault. Now, often another tactic gets thrown into the mix: triangulation. This is where they bring a third person into your dynamic. Maybe they'll say something like, well, Sarah agrees with me, or they're constantly comparing you to an ex or a coworker. The goal is always the same: create chaos, create jealousy and division, because in that chaos, they get to stay in control. So, who are the people behind these masks, pulling these strings? That takes us to our third section, the faces of narcissism. Now, this is really important. Narcissism is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And look, we can all have our moments, but what we're talking about here is a consistent, damaging pattern. On one hand, you've got grandiose narcissism. This is the stereotype you probably think of: loud, self-important, dominant, always seeking attention. But then you've got vulnerable or covert narcissism. And this one is much sneakier. It looks like extreme sensitivity, like a quiet but intense self-centeredness, and a whole lot of passive aggression. It is way, way harder to spot. And that difference between grandiose and vulnerable becomes absolutely critical when you see this number: 75%. According to the DSM-5, that's the official diagnostic manual, a staggering 75% of all narcissistic personality disorder diagnoses are given to men. So what's with that huge gap? Well, a lot of researchers think there might be a gender bias at play. For a long time, the criteria for diagnosing NPD really focused on those big, loud, grandiose traits, like being dominant and exploitative, which tend to line up with more traditional masculine stereotypes. So what happens? The quieter, more vulnerable expressions of narcissism, which some studies suggest might be more common in females, just get missed, or worse, misdiagnosed as something else entirely. Okay, so a manipulator almost never works alone. They need a supporting cast. And this brings us to a really fascinating concept called recruiting the flying monkeys. Yep, that term comes straight out of The Wizard of Oz, and it is perfect. Flying monkeys are the people a narcissist recruits to basically do their dirty work. Their job is to spread the narcissist's version of reality, to help discredit the actual victim, and to make that victim feel completely isolated and, well, like they're the crazy one. And these recruits, they usually fall into one of three camps.
First, you have the willing. These folks might be a bit narcissistic themselves, and honestly, they just love the drama. Then you've got the naive. These are good people who have been fed a totally one-sided or false story, and they genuinely think they're on the side of the victim. And last, you have the unwilling. These are people who get roped in through guilt or fear. They're basically given an ultimatum. If you're not with me, you're against me.
So here you are, facing the victim act, the gaslighting, maybe even a few flying monkeys. What on earth can you actually do? This brings us to our last, and I think most important section, how to respond effectively and just break their script. See, the key is to stop playing a part in their drama and to start following your own script. So step 1, identify the tactic. Just call it what it is, even just to yourself. 2, trust your gut, trust your perception. Ground yourself in what you know to be true. 3, and this is a big one, set firm boundaries. Clearly say what is and is not okay with you. 4, and don't be afraid to do this, limit contact or cut it off entirely if you need to. Your mental health comes first. And 5, seek support. Find your people, build a network that validates your reality, not the manipulator.
You know, in the end, it really all boils down to a massive shift in perspective. So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. What changes for you? What becomes possible when you stop seeing their performance of pain and start seeing their pattern of manipulation? Think about it.